you get to a point where you're like, you never forget, and the healing, it doesn't ever get easier, but it just gets a little better-ish.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of The Day After. On today's episode, we sit down with Gina, who shares with us the devastating loss of her mom to pancreatic cancer. It's so hard to hear these stories, but at the same time, it's extremely encouraging to hear how others have struggled in the same ways and to hear the beauty and the joy and the love that comes from all that pain. And I hope you will be as encouraged as I was while listening to this episode. And before I let you go, I wanted to remind you that we do have an opportunity for you to help support the show financially. So if you go to thedayafter.com/plus, for the cost of one coffee a month, you're able to help support the show if that is something that you feel you want to do. And as always, share as widely and as broadly as you can to help get our guests' stories to the hands of those who need them. Thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the show.
So in 2011, my sister got married in 2011 in St. Pete Beach in Florida. Our entire family came. My brother just had his first daughter, my parents' first grandbaby. All that my parents ever wanted to do was become a grandparent. They didn't even care that we were getting old, and they didn't care who did it. They just wanted somebody to have a baby. And so Gia was born in May, and so she was 6 weeks old. Everybody that was, it was a small, like 40-person wedding. That was in July of 2000. And then in September, my mom had a nagging stomach ache. It was bothering her. We didn't really know what was the matter. She had gone to her regular doctor. They thought she had acid reflux. They thought maybe it was, something she was eating. And the baby was coming home because they lived in New York City to meet all of our closest family and friends. And so she's like, I'm just waiting till this party's done and then I'll go to the hospital. It was that bad. And she never complained. And the party was on a Saturday. And then that Sunday morning, my dad took her to the hospital. It was around like September 25th. And that's when it all began. She literally could eat nothing. She was throwing up. Anything that she put into her mouth, those pink buckets from the hospital, like forever give us PTSD. And, I don't want to say they poo-pooed it, but they kind of did. And so she went to I can't even think of the type of doctor, the GI doctor, gastro doctor we went to. Long of the short with that, come to find out. So they decided they determined that she had a genetic defect to her pancreas called pancreatic divisum. And they thought that literally when you looked at the imaging of her pancreas, you could see a healthy half of the pancreas and like the other side of her pancreas was black. It was crazy. And they said that, and your pancreas we didn't really understand the pancreas. We had never heard of pancreatic cancer. It was like just a huge learning curve. So they thought that this divisum was what was causing her inability to digest food well. So they rested her pancreas. They gave her liquid nutrition called TPN. So she really did not chew food from probably, I'd say, October until she died that May, like in 7 months. I mean, the human body is amazing as far as what it can live on. I mean, we tried to make smoothies, liquid, Gatorade. She basically lived on Gatorade. I mean, it was terrible. So come January, after months and months of her just withering away, so sick, couldn't eat. Like I said, she was just in horrible, tons of painkillers. They decided that they were going to do the Whipple procedure. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they basically said that other than open heart surgery, the Whipple is the most invasive procedure that you can have, where it's essentially they were going to hack off the diseased part of her pancreas, and then they were going to rework all her internal plumbing and rewire her digestion through her intestines and whatnot. So, she was distraught. It was like New Year's Eve that year. She was in the hospital for New Year's. We remember very clearly saying, like, it's turning 2012. We're like, Mom, it's going to be terrible to recover, but it was going to be her path to recovery. We brought up cancer many times. Do you think it's cancer? No. We would never sit on pancreatic cancer, blah, blah, blah. So the night before her surgery, on Friday the 13th was her surgery of January. Her birthday is January 14th. So it was the day before her birthday. We went in to say goodnight and good luck and, whatever. And the surgeon came in and said that throughout this process, they had seen something, what they thought was called a pseudocyst on her pancreas, and they thought it was harmless. So when she came in that night, she said, what we think has been a pseudocyst this whole time, the radiologist just looked at the scans again, they don't think it's a cyst. They think it's a tumor. And if it's a tumor, it's entwined in blood vessels. It's going to be inoperable. And we would be talking about quality of life and comfort care versus healing. So my very weak mother, who's lost probably 30 pounds, mind you, she's 57 years old. She's turning 58 the next day. Here's this. And basically my dad said it was like the worst night that he had with her, even after we found out what it was, because she was sure that she was going to wake up and be told that she had terminal cancer. We all were very much like, Mom, they're just telling you this. Like, it's just, they're previewing. They have to tell you this. They're covering themselves, blah, blah, blah. So we leave, we go home. My dad stays with her overnight. She's like, it's horrible. He said it was horrible. And then, she's going down at like 6 a.m. for this procedure. And she's got this in her head. And it's supposed to be like a 10-hour procedure to do this Whipple. And so we're in the waiting room, and they like the nurse, there's phones. It's like literally out of an episode of Grey's Anatomy. So, my dad's like, you take the call, because he was so overwhelmed. And he's like, you're the teacher, you understand. So they were going to call us periodically throughout the surgery to tell us how she was doing. So they did the first call. She went under fine. They're like, she's doing great. 2 hours later, they're like, Master's family to the phone. Okay, we go to the thing. I'm like, hello. They're like, the doctor wants to talk to you. And I'm like, while she's in surgery, like right now. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, well, this can't be good at all. And basically she said, that it was the worst case scenario, and that, in fact, that cyst was a tumor, and it was in her pancreas, entwined in blood vessels in her pancreas, and it had spread to her stomach lining and to her liver. So that puts her at a stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Now, remember, we think our mother's going in for this dreadful surgery to become healed and cured. And now,
right.
So I go, so what are you saying? Like, what are you telling? I said, what does this mean? And she said, I'm telling you that your mother will live for 6 months to a year with treatment, if she has any success with it, to shrink the tumor. With no treatment, if she chooses not to do it, she'll live likely 3 to 6 months. And I literally said out loud, I'm like, so you're telling me my mother's going to die in 3 to 6 months? And we had like 20 of our closest family and friends like in the thing. Everybody just like let out this shriek. It was awful. I like remember it like it was yesterday. And she said, yes. And I said, okay. So I said, well, what are you doing now? Because obviously we're not going to put her through this procedure because she's got cancer all over her insides. And she just said that they were going to do some things to rewire her plumbing a little bit to maybe help with some digestion to make her a little bit more comfortable, but that no, she wouldn't be going through the procedure. So they still had to open her up and do all of this to determine that she had the cancer. So she still had to like recover from an operation per se. And she, was already so weak to begin with. And yeah, so that was January 13th. And we brought her home like a week later, and she died May 7th, 4 months later.
So did she do treatment or no?
She didn't want to at all. We begged her to please try one. There's 3 of us in my family. I'm the oldest, and then my sister and my brother who had just had the baby. And we all were on very different pages with that. So that was hard because so we basically said to her, if you would please just try one round just to see. Because the nurses at the hospital kept saying and that's the other thing. Like, we hear all this is happening to her. We're reeling from this news. We were not expecting this diagnosis. And then they're like, we're going to bring in the palliative care team. We're like, what does that even mean? And they're like, well, it's comfort care. We're like, well, comfort care, like she's not dying today. So just learning all the like medical stuff was just like, oh my God, it was so much to process. And so we basically said, if you will please try one just to see if it makes a difference. And so she agreed to do one, and they go through the whole list of side effects of things that might or might not happen to her. And of course, every single one did. The cold sensitivity being the worst one. And she literally felt like she was getting like glass, like cut every time she put her hands under the water. And I remember very clearly, she was sitting in the bathroom. She put her head down. She's like, please don't make me do that again. I'm like, Mom, you don't have to do anything else you want to do again. Fine. Thank you. You tried. And at that point, like it was never going to cure her. But like, if she hadn't already been so weak, like I said, she had not had nutrition in months.
Right.
I mean, she was so beaten down, like already weakened. They basically did an operation on her that she had to recover from. And now we're putting poison into her. So it's just like, yeah.
You mentioned that you guys were all on different pages with wanting her to get treatment. What was that like? You and your siblings were on a different page, or your mom and your sibling, you and your
No, my
siblings?
siblings and my dad. I mean, it just everybody was just, my sister was 6 months pregnant also with her first baby. So, and her and my mother, we were all very close to our moms, but like my sister and my mother had a very deep relationship. So she was just like, we're going to do anything we need to do to like keep mom right here. Like she just did not. And I
Gotcha.
was trying to explain, I'm like, she is suffering. She is in pain.
Yeah.
Nothing that we are going to do is going to fix her. At this point, she was sleeping more than she was awake because we were just doing whatever we needed to do to keep her comfortable. And my brother was living in New York City, as I said at the time. He literally uprooted his family and came home, and we all moved back into our childhood home, essentially. And
No way.
oh yeah, we sat it. It was like time stopped. I mean, I was a teacher and I did go to school, and then I would go back at night. But I ended up taking FMLA because I was she'd be awake for like an hour in the morning, and my sister would be like telling me like, "Oh, mom did this or she said that," and I was at work. And so I was missing it. So I did end up taking FMLA toward the end of the journey, but I didn't end up needing to take it for very long because she went, soon after I took it. But yeah, so it was just, there was just a lot going on. We've got a little baby in the house that was bringing all kinds of joy, but we're all, we've now got like six adults, all for the better part of in our little tiny, like it was not a big home. So there was just a lot, and my dad ended up taking FMLA from work. He said the day we found out she had this, he's like, she will never be alone. Somebody will always be there. And we were very lucky because the three of us each had a significant other at the time. And then my dad. So there were
Mm.
7 of us that were able to provide essentially round the clock care. So she was never alone, and she did not want to go back to the hospital if we could help it. She just basically begged us, please let me just be home. I want to be home.
What was that like navigating being all 7 of you with the child and your sister being pregnant and such a tense situation?
It was honestly, it's weird to say, but it was beautiful. Like, because again, my
Mm.
brother had lived away for a long time. My niece, they were living in New York City, so we weren't going to see my niece every day. So like she just, so we had the baby there who just brought constant like joy. My mom was singing songs to the baby. I'm gonna cry. We're patty caking. We have videos of her doing that. So I mean, it was really, really beautiful. And I do have to say, like, we're Italian, we're loud, and we really kept it together pretty good. We didn't have too many, we all kind of each had our roles, and, we were
Mm.
able to give each other breaks and stuff. So, I mean, it was, I'm not going to say it was perfect, but it was wonderful to think that we had a family. My sister was working from home at the time. And like I said, my brother was a police officer, so he took FMLA, so he wasn't working. My dad was home, so they could like bounce off of each other. And so it just gave everybody like time and space that they needed. But we are so blessed that we were able to have jobs and people that could essentially, we stopped life and just did mom. That's what we
Mm.
did, because it was so, I mean, I just, we, and because that happened, my brother had always said he wanted to move back home to Rochester to raise his family because New York City's so expensive. They were living in a really small apartment in Queens. And, so when this happened, he just never went back. This was like the foot in
Oh,
the door
wow.
and the kick in the
Mm.
butt that he needed. So, our pastor at her funeral talked about, that as tragic as this was, small miracles did come of it. And that was definitely one of them. So,
Yeah, that's amazing. What was the adjustment period after she passes, and then you guys kind of all now go back into your own homes and your own life?
no, we all stayed there. My sister and I, the boys didn't, but my sister and I stayed probably for like a good week, because then after that, we knew that she was terminal, but that was one thing, like we chose not to, like, we didn't prepare funeral, burial, like we didn't have a burial plot. I mean, nothing. My parents, they're in their 50s. I mean, you don't think that you need these things when you're in your 50s. So there was a lot to do, obviously, with a lot of those things. And, you're just kind of on the high of all the things that need to be done. So it just was easier for us to be there. But yeah, we were probably all there, and it was a very big deal. We were like, all right, I think tonight's going to be the night. And then we're like, no, I can't. We can't. We got to stay one more time. So it was probably a good week and a half before we went back home. And then, yeah, and then dad, he went back to work, because then, how it is, like, it's so busy. It was like a crazy 2 weeks. The wake was, she was a cheerleading coach at Holy Cross School, our parish, growing up, and we all went to school there. My nieces and nephews are now going to school there. It's like our family legacy. So she had literally been involved in that school and in the CYO program for over 37 years. So I mean, all her former, like, the people she coached, the parents of the kids she coached. So I mean, her wake was just beautiful. The funeral was amazing. The church was packed. I mean, there was lines out the door. I mean, it was just such a tribute to her. So, you're on the high of all that in a weird way. I don't mean in a good way, but just, you're talking to everybody. And so afterward, we're like, dear, like, what do you do? Like, what do we even do now? And for 4 months, it was all about taking care of her. So there was just this hole, like, as I mean, it was just, yeah, it was wild. Very. Yeah, because the meal train, we had a meal train, people did a meal train for us. So, there was people visiting all the time and and then all of that just goes away and you're just like lost. It
The
was
silence becomes very deafening at that point.
yeah.
What was your reaction to that? Like when that silence comes, the activity stops, people, you know, I mean, people close to us, they have the best intentions, but at some point, like their life continues to move forward and the person experiencing the loss, their life has forever changed, right? And it's like they're in it every single day. There is no such thing as like moving on or moving forward. So, like, what was your reaction to that?
It was almost, I remember very clearly, my sister and I talk about it all the time, like, and we still do, like, we were like almost like mad, like, don't these people know? Like, how are you just like doing, like they're going on about their day. But I will say, like, we had this little baby that was now a year old, and then my sister had her new baby, and we were very much like, mom will be a household name. These kids will know mom through us and the stories that we tell. I was a very big proponent of like that. Like that was like our thing. And I'm like, so I said, we did not grow up in a sad home. So these children are not going to grow up in a sad home. And like, it was almost like they were here to force us to go on because we would have been stuck, especially my dad. I mean, it gave him purpose. My parents were high school sweethearts. They dated since they were 14. They'd been married for 37 years. That was the only love and relationship that they ever knew. So he was just, going to these things as a plus one. And he was beside himself, not having a person. And we're big talkers in our family. So anyone that wanted to listen to us, we were like happy to tell our story. And that gave us, I think, a lot of just therapy and comfort to have, people that cared enough to like want to listen and stuff. So, but I think the biggest thing we did was we really did try to get back into our normal routine. Dad did go right back to work as much as, you feel like you don't want to, because again, your mind can just reel and you can just sit there and think, yourself to death, your own self. And, we are here and, dad is young and these kids had, they needed to have this wonderful life and we needed to do that for her. So the hardest thing for us was watching our dad go on to date again after her. And that caused there was a lot of tension, a lot of animosity, especially with my brother. He just couldn't believe that dad would do that. He just, it was very, so that was a very hard, it opened up a lot of, it was 3.5 years after she died. I mean, it's, he wasn't really looking for anything either. I don't think he could imagine it, but he would be the one that would go home to that empty house every night where the only house they'd ever lived in by himself. And he was just so sad. And, and so it actually was a friend of our family's, not a close friend, but she'd been divorced and they kind of reconnected and, he found companionship with her. But that was just so, you get to a point where you're like, you never forget, and the healing, it doesn't ever get easier, but it just gets a little better ish. And then when this happened, it just brought, oh my God, that was a very, very tumultuous, probably 2 years in the middle there of this whole thing. So it's much better now, but there was a lot of growing that needed to happen on all of our parts. And I think that we thought we were doing really well. And then he told us that and we're like, ooh, yeah, no, we're not doing well at all. Not good.
What was your response to that for somebody new to be with your dad, to see him with somebody new? How did you feel about it? How did you respond?
I wanted him to, we all had significant others. We all had, and he was very active in the softball community. All of their friends, like, they've all been married for 40 years. Like, that's just what that generation, did. And he was the only one that didn't have someone. And, he was not wanting to go to things because of that. And we're like, I'm like, we don't want to lose our dad too. And like, he would be the type of guy that could probably like die of a broken heart because they just loved each other so much. And they had a lot of things that they overcame in their life, but they, stuck together through everything. And, we went to Catholic school. Money did not come easy. Like, we were not, so what did they have? They had like each other. They very much identified as couples. Like, they were a couple, never, I can't do this without daddy, would be mom. I mean, he would leave the hospital to go like home and take a shower. We'd be in there and she'd be like, when's daddy coming back? I'm like, mom, I'm here, like teasing her. And she's like, I know, but I just really feel better when dad's here. So, I wanted him to like be able to not feel lonely, essentially. So I was definitely, and I found myself, mediating between my brother and sister because they just couldn't we had the babies. They didn't want someone else to take the role of grandma. They just, knowing how much our mom wanted to be a grandma, like, and that was never to be the case, but like, they just couldn't understand how that was going to go. And, basically the mentality was, you do what you're doing, whatever makes you happy, that's fine, but don't bring us around it. But we're not that kind of family. Like, we have Sunday dinner every week. The kids are all together. There was a lot of stress between my brother and my dad. Like, I'm like, no, we are not doing that. Like, this is so, but he very much wanted her included in our family things, rightfully so. So it's just been a very, very long, slow journey.
Are they still together today?
They are, and they live together. Yeah. So they've been together for like 8 years. And
Wow.
like I said, things are much better. And ironically, 3 years ago, the man I'm now dating had lost his wife to cancer. And for sure. So the parallels are so weird. So yeah, so I was in a very long-term relationship when my mom was sick with another person. That's another story. And so, yeah, so this man and I met, and I literally, like, you talk about like, so long story short, before we ended up understanding, I knew that he was widowed and stuff. But as I'm like understanding this, he had 2 daughters that were a little older, like in their 20s. They were very resistant to him dating. So because of the experience that like I had gone through, like I could be empathetic. But when I first heard all of this, I like told him, I'm like, I'm all set with this. Like, I'm not doing this to someone else's family. I know what we went through as a family. We're a super close family. So are they. I said, I can't. I know, and he was like, I don't understand what you're saying, because again, like, he hadn't seen that side of it. I'm like, you don't know what it's like from the perspective of the daughter whose dad goes on to date someone else, and the daughter who loses the mother, so now you like fast forward, like, these girls are going to get married. They're going to have babies. They're going to like, they're going to want their mom, basically. So.
But in some ways, you're actually like, because you have the empathy, you become like a better candidate for that, right?
Well, right. No. So it has like literally, like, that's what we say all the time. So I feel like because of what was so hard for us and what was so stressful for us, it allowed me to look in the mirror and myself and really handle that situation more delicately. And then also, I was very honest with my dad after. I said, listen, I'm like, this was, we could have handled that much better. Like, we did not know, and we were reeling, and it's not like it's anything we ever expected to be going through, but it was a very humbling experience for that. And I think my family was so happy for me and the person that I found and wanted to be excited about it. And I'm like, well, then we have to look in the mirror and realize dad's afforded the same type of thing.
Yeah.
And you can love more than one person, and it doesn't mean that he loves mom any less than he loved her, her. And that's a whole different, it's a whole different relationship, and it's a whole nother time in life. And so it was just, I think that, we really believe that there's bigger workings happening up there that somehow made these planets align in some way for many reasons, healing on our end. And also that I, could provide a little bit of, like you said, empathy toward the situation that, the kids are in that I'm with now. So,
yeah. That's wild. Yeah. Like I always have conversations with the kids as I've dated through the years. And anytime I'm like ready to start dating again, it's always a conversation. But at the same time, it's also hard because they're kind of just like, well, if you're happy, like, we'll be happy. And I'm like, yeah, but also like, I understand, like, it could be a challenge, right? Like, to see me with somebody else and to find somebody that made me, ecstatic and that I was just so deeply in love with again could be a really difficult thing for them. But, the thing that I'm extremely grateful for is that my wife, Ariana, before she died, she spent a lot of time talking to the kids, and they were young. So it was maybe a little bit harder, but she just told them, like, Daddy needs to, he's going to be with somebody again, and I'm okay with it. And this is okay.
Oh,
she would tell
wow.
me, she talked with me about it, like finding somebody and being okay with it. Like, she spent a lot of time just making sure that we were okay with this and that the kids were okay with it. And even though they were young, I still believe that it had a significant impact on them. And yeah, so I'm really grateful for that, because it is a tricky situation. And I've taken it for granted in the past where I'm just like, well, I got to do what's happy for me and the kids will be fine.
Right.
And they say they're fine and I'm not checking in with them. And I'm definitely being a lot more cautious at this point.
How old are How old are your kids?
15, 13, and 11.
You know, and I mean,
so they were younger.
Yeah, because how long your wife passed away? How long ago?
3 years ago next month.
3 years ago. Yeah, so they were, because I mean,
this month. Fuck yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's September. Oh God.
September.
But I mean, I do feel like the teacher in me knows that kids are so resilient. Like we say that all the time. Like if we could all be as accepting, because like I mean, literally, I was teaching kindergarten at the time when she was sick, and they all were writing me cards, and one of the cards after she passed away was, you know, dear, she said, you know, wrote me the note and said, we're really sorry that Terry died, but we're really glad because now you can come back to school, you know, like it's just, because they're just so concrete. But, you know, like, so, I mean, honestly, like the fact that your wife gave you that gift of talking to those kids and being able, you know, you have that to anchor back on into, I think in a lot of ways, it was just so much harder for us because we were 35, 33, and 31. Like we, you know, we had our mom, you know, so it was just like, you know, we're like adults.
I honestly, I mean, maybe I blocked it out, but I really don't even remember like my dad dating that much. Like genuinely, I know that there was one other woman I remember coming over for like dinner one night, but it was like not introduced as like a girlfriend. And then there was like Delana. Like, I don't even know that my dad like dated a lot. And he could tell you something completely different. I just like don't remember it.
He just got lucky.
Yeah, he found her right away. In a grief group. So they were just both, you know. So like I don't really remember being like, oh, I don't want you to get married, or like I'm mad that you're dating. Like I really was.
Right, you didn't even understand the difference. Yeah.
And I kind of always, I don't like, and I also like at that time, I don't know, maybe it's like the societal thing of like dating after death and like moving on. But like for kids, like we don't even like I didn't even know like, you know, what the societal norm was, right? Like if anything, it was like parent dies. We have a mom and a dad, so dad gets remarried. You know, I think as simple as that. Like,
right, you just get another one. Like, yeah, no, it's so interesting that you say that though too, because people were and like, you know, again, we were born and raised in Charlotte, small. My parents they all went to school and you know at Holy Cross. My grandparents was. I mean, we don't, you know, everyone laughs. No one leaves Charlotte, like where we live, and we still live like 3 miles away from each other. But like people all had like stake in this conversation, like be like, oh my God, like the kids are being so mean, like blah, 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 like us and like acting like we were like brats, and, you know, and we're like, listen, and then we would like tell our side of the story. And then people would be like, oh yeah, like we don't get it. And it's just that whole idea of like empathy versus like you can have an opinion on something until you're the one like that's going through it. And then it's like, you know, I mean, we didn't even know we had that opinion. Like literally, like this was just like raw, you know, reeling emotions that were still so like, you know, deeply apparently there. And so like the idea of that was just like, oh my gosh. Now again, but everybody grows and evolves. And like you look at yourself and you do work on yourself. And like we've done much better. And, you know, and we can say that. I mean, my brother still, he can be cordial. He's very, you know, he's polite. But I mean, it doesn't go much further than that. But again, you know, holidays can be all together. Like, I mean, any event that came up, it was going to be like, well, is it okay if she come? And I'm more like, oh my God, like it's Thanksgiving. Like we just want to be grateful for things. Like we don't want everything. And so because of all of that, like when I entered into my relationship, like I knew all the things that I didn't like or that I wished maybe had been different. And I've literally like made it my mission to like do better, not better, but you know, to do it in a way that I feel like was, and it's literally like been able to be, I feel like so much more productive, like because of the experience that we've gone through. So yeah, but it is fascinating how people, like different people have different thoughts on things and what, you know, people, you know, he's young, of course he's going to go on and date someone else. And we're like, you know, and it, you know, and then looking back, we're like, well, what did we want him to do? Just sit in the house and look at her pictures all day? Cause like, that's not constructive either. So
it's interesting to hear like your perspective. And I think outside of the parental and the child relationship, when you're talking about like other people having an opinion, because I have definitely dealt with a lot of opinion that I just didn't think was going to happen once I became a widow. And some of it really fucking hurt bad. Like things that people have said to me, I couldn't believe it.
Right.
The judgments that people place on me without even like asking me what I'm thinking or feeling. Like, it kind of just blows my mind that when you have these deaths, when you have like these significant events and it's a young death, that people feel really entitled to say things. And I don't quite understand why.
Literally not entitled to say a damn word. That's all I can say to that.
It's insane. It puts me on edge now too.
Oh, I know. That's horrible.
Yeah. I always have to remind myself that it's like their own insecurities or their own issues coming out, because it's like to say that someone doesn't have the right to date after they lost their wife. Like, first of all, fuck you. Like, and to say that it's easier for the husband or it's harder for a parent, a sibling, it's not harder for anyone. Everyone has just lost a loved one. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you can't replace a daughter or a son, and you can't replace a sibling, but you also can't replace the love of your life. Like it's not the same. You're going to find someone, CJ, and it's going to be like, it's different. Yes, you still, like, you love both of them.
Well, and I will say too, CJ, just so you know, like, I live in a home right now where pictures of the girl's mom are all over the house. And, we say this, people are like, is that weird? I'm like, not one bit. Like, because I know the value and the importance of like keeping our mother's memory alive. And we've done a ton of different things to do that. And people still talk about her 12 years later. Like, and that it doesn't make me sad anymore. It brings me such joy because like she is not forgotten. And so like the right person will come along and honor your children's mother and revere her. And like, I mean, I'm like asking questions about the girl's mom all the time. Like, tell me about this. They know my story a little bit. And the more that we're, the longer we've been together, the more we've like shared. But I think it's been like really good. We're like friends, like me and the girls, so like it also, like that's the thing too. Like, you're not looking to replace their mother. You're just looking.
Exactly.
It could be another role model in their life though, and someone for them to like turn to or whatever the case may be. And I'm sure your wife would want, I say to my sister all the time, we want these kids to have as much love as possible. So if there's the right person to provide that, like, why would we not, allow that for, you, them, the whole thing. So
I have one question actually for you, Ashley, that it came up. This is a little bit of a callback to an earlier statement, but when you were talking about how, Gina, you were talking about how you guys wanted to keep your mother's memory alive with the kids and to make sure that like her story is known and all that, which I think is beautiful. And I love a reaction to a death where we are going to keep this memory alive and not being afraid of that. Mm-hmm. Ashley, because obviously you were so young when your mom died, I'm wondering, like, I know you would have intention to share Aunt Nancy with your kids if you ever have kids.
Yeah.
Is that like things that you've thought about? Like, have you put any thought into what that would be like for you?
I like thought of like how it looks or like.
Like how you would do that. Do you want to do? Well, I know you want to, but you know what I mean?
Yes, I want to. And I don't know that I've like really thought about it, but I see how my uncles do it with their kids. They all my cousins, like even at a very young age, knew about Aunt Nancy that was in heaven. And so I'd probably ask their advice and see like how they kind of, because they have pictures of my mom all around their house. So I'm sure that the kids were like, who's this? Like, we don't see her at the, we have a family cottage that we all go to in the summers. And so I'm sure that they're like, who's this? Like, we don't see her at the cottage. I don't know if that's exactly how the conversation started, but yeah, no, absolutely. And it also helps that, it doesn't help. It wouldn't make a difference. But my boyfriend lost his dad at a young age too. So we're kind of both in the same boat of, keeping that memory alive.
Yeah. And I think that has been almost like our therapy, like in a lot of ways, like know that the kids, I mean, they all have pictures of her in their room. Like we call it Grandma's Garden at the cemetery. Like we go there. The little girls are doing cheerleading too, just like her. We go do cheers and people probably look at us like we're crazy at the cemetery if they're driving by. The girls are doing like round offs and, the whole thing. We're loud, but that's what we want them, to have. And like, and it's sad too, because like, again, I feel like everybody too, like, I mean, your wife was so young, CJ, like that literally just like breaks my heart because I just, like so many people now I feel like are like getting married like later in life. So again, like we were in our 30s having, we're like, we failed her. We should have having kids in our 20s like everybody, used to do because she didn't have like that time. But I just think it's
the way the world is now.
Yeah, no. So but again, they were young parents. So, she was just like, hello, like my friends are having kids. Like, what are you guys doing here? But I think, just that was just so important to us. Like, if she can't be here, it's
Mhm.
like the next, like, best thing. And we also had we had a golf tournament in her honor for we ran it for 10 full years. Our parish came to us afterward and we're just like, we really want to do this. And it raised money. So half of the proceeds went to the school, Holy Cross School itself, for Catholic education, because keeping that afloat these days is special too. As much as we can do to do that. And then the other half goes to a scholarship that's in her name that a kid can apply for each year. And the questions are very pertinent to her life about her value to family and community service and and sportsmanship. So I mean, like, just little things. So I mean, like, years of kids that she hasn't known, like, know her name, they know her story, they know what she stood for. So that has just been, and so now as the kids are growing up, like, in that world, like, they proudly speak of, this is my grandma, this is, when they go to the gym. And so
Oh,
it's
right.
just really, it's fascinating because they've literally never met her and they feel like they know her. And like, that is like really like one of my greatest points of pride, because that was our job, like, to do. And then us, if you don't talk about, you forget too. So like the more, the stories that we tell, it's kept her very prevalent in our lives too. So it's been mutually beneficial.
Are there things that you do? You can insert whatever word you want, but we, say like rituals or ways that you connect back with your mom that help you to kind of just feel connected back to her? Is that anything you've developed over the past 12, 13 years?
Oh yeah, like, as far as like, well, we always do her birthday. Like, every holiday we go to Grandma's Garden. Again, it's not like a sad place. We go. That's just, they just know we do the tour. We go to the two sets of grandparents. We go to mom and we go to my godmother. So they know the little route, and we take them on their bikes in the summer. So we do that for each of the holidays. And then on her anniversary, we go there. And then we had the kids, we sit down and we all like tell we tell stories, a little story, like, on the anniversary of her death. And on her birthday, the first few years we did like a balloon release and all that, like, for the birthday when they were small. But we still literally do a cake. We sing to her, like, we tell them how old, like, she would be. But I think the biggest legacy we did was like that golf tournament, because I mean, it was like literally like the school colors are black and gold. We had it at different country clubs. The golf sold out like crazy. It's this whole like Charlotte reunion. These former cheerleaders would come, all her old like dad's basketball players, all the softball people come, our current family comes. So it was just, we did the tournament for 10 years and we raised over $250,000 for
Holy
the
shit.
school and her scholarship. Yeah, each year was like a $25,000 thing. So I mean, again, more about her and just the amount of people that like know that. But that was like the biggest thing. So we said, now that the tournament's done, because it kind of ran its course, we're going to try to figure out something else. The committee calls themselves Terry's Angels. So we're going to try to figure out Terry's Angels next project.
Oh, I love
Do
that.
you have anything that you personally do, like in like the private of your own heart or space, or anything where it helps you? So we've had one guest on who he has a specific candle that he lights and an incense that helps him, and he feels reconnected to his dad. Like, people have developed these different things. For me, like, I'm still kind of like floating around on what I do. I talk to Ariana pretty much every day, but I think I was challenged by one of my therapists, because I love therapy so much. I have multiple therapists.
Good for you.
And
Do
they
you
each have
use
their own
that?
specialty.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do you use that like divorced parents? Like, they said that was okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my other therapist told me that.
I know.
No.
Right? Yeah, you can play them against each other.
Yeah, they each have different specialties, but the somatic therapist, like, she challenged me of like, why don't you, instead of just having this just like random bursts of like talking to her, find a way where it becomes more ritualized, where it's like, okay, I'm setting this environment, I'm setting this intention, and I'm setting this quiet place to talk to her and to reconnect with her. And it's something that I've been experimenting with. So have you found yourself having any of those kinds of things throughout the years?
Say anything that specific. No, I do have a picture of her in my classroom with a poem that was on the back of her prayer card. And so she's like there. So like every class, every year, they all get introduced to Terry. One little girl this year has her birthday, actually. So that'll be a whole conversation.
Oh.
But I'm very upfront with the kids. You know, they're 7. I'm very upfront with them though about, you know, Terry and who she is. My mom, she's in heaven. She's watching me. I might talk about her a lot, but I feel like, I guess my ritual is that she's still a part of my like everyday life. We did have bracelets that they got, the cheerleading team was called the Holy Cross Bombers. So we had a fight like a bomber bracelet that we all wore. But just, you know, like that, like I feel like that's just always there. But I was just talking to my boyfriend the other day about how I said, I don't think there's been one day, whether it's just in conversation or just like that her name isn't mentioned or that it fleets like through my head. So I just know, like, and we've gotten so many signs, and I mean, it's.
What are those signs?
Pennies are Terry all day long. She drops pennies constantly. Definitely my boyfriend's wife flashes lights, and that's
Oh, wow.
crazy.
Whoa.
Crazy. Like, I'm in the house, like, and I'll get the light sometimes, and it's not consistent. Like, he's checked all the bulbs. He's like, is it loose? It's not. It is the weirdest thing. It can come. And it's been mind boggling. But yeah, Mom, I definitely, whenever we see pennies, we know she's close by. And then my sister and I were walking last winter. We take lots of walks, and we were walking. A deer literally came like 2 feet from us, and it was right around one of her anniversaries. I don't remember what, must have been her birthday because it was winter. And it just stood there, and we're like, that. I'm like, that has got to be Mom. Like, something's up. And if you read like that, they like, you know, can show themselves in like animals and butterflies too. Butterflies are floating all around us.
I've been trying to be more open to signs. I've talked about this before on the show, but I've always tried to excuse them away of like, it's just coincidence or things like that. But there's definitely been things that have been just unexplainable. So as I've been like more open to them, it's been, you know, there's been like some significant positive things happening in my life, and I've been talking to Ariana about it. And I did notice when I was walking the other day and I was having like a really, really difficult day, some challenging thoughts, and I had 3 butterflies come around me, 3 white butterflies.
And you know that they're them because they stay. Do they stay for a minute too?
It's like one of them just stayed around me for a little bit, a couple seconds.
So cool.
10 seconds, 15 seconds. So I was like, okay, let me try to be open and see if this is what it is. And I like tried to allow myself. And then later that day, I was walking with Grace or somebody, one of my kids, and we were walking back. And another one just happened to be right there.
Oh my gosh, come on.
I was just like,
it's beautiful. No,
that's the one. Yeah. That's the one that she's like literally gonna slapping you across the face. Like, are you kidding me? This is obviously me.
How many do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Have you been to a medium, CJ?
You know, it's funny you bring that up. So I have actually one of our first guests, my buddy Carl. He keeps telling me to go. He keeps encouraging me. He goes pretty frequently to talk with his dad. And I've been told on multiple occasions to go. I've just been really, really scared.
Oh my God. I have to tell you, there is a world beyond here. It is the most fascinating thing I've ever done. And I would highly, highly encourage you to do it. I mean, we're born and raised Catholic, and I do believe in heaven and an afterlife, but the things that came out that you're just like, there's just no way unless, I mean, I have an amazing, well, she's local though, but yeah, I mean, and it's not the type of thing you go to like monthly or weekly.
Right.
Like I think I've gone 3 times in 12 years. Yeah. Like you space them out, and like I've connected with my grandma who lived with me. Like she died after my mom, but just, I mean, utterly fascinating. Like it will give you such solace, I feel like, and peace of mind to know that number one, she's okay and that she is with you. I think that was just, it was, we were very skeptical too. And the first time we went in with my sister and I went together, we went in with very like high expectations. Like, I think we thought like Mom was going to like become an apparition and sit in the room and like talk to us. Like, and we were just like, so like, it was like, you know, a couple months after, and we were just so excited, and then we're like, okay, wait, no, it doesn't work like that. And so I think we were a little disappointed at first, but then once we understood more about like what it was, we went, and it was very interesting. So if and when you feel ready, I think it would be very, very comforting.
I definitely want to. I just have such a negative bias where I'm like, I'm going to go, and either like I'm going to be told something like horrific is going to happen to me, or Ariana's going to yell at me, or like I just have like such a negative bias where I'm like, something will be wrong. which is something that has significantly changed this year, but everything just kept going wrong for so long in my life. And now, like, coincidentally, everything has been going so right in my life this year since
Great.
like something shifted in me and some like intense healing has come to me. Like I've pushed through these boundaries and everything in my life is now opening up, but I still feel very scared to go to a medium.
They're not like psychics though, right? They're not going to like tell you the future.
That's what I was going to say to you when you said like they're not going to tell you anything, bad that's happening.
I've had 2 mediums reach out to me and tell me stuff about Ariana. So like I've definitely had experience with it.
Oh, weird.
And,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So right when she first died, the same day or was the next, no, it was the same day or the next day, I had a friend of mine, an ex-colleague, reach out, and this person was like, hey, I don't really publicize this. Nobody really knows, but I'm actually a medium. And I had a vision come to me. I had something come to me, but I wasn't going to tell you unless Ariana died at 11:00 something. And she was like, I saw on Facebook that Ariana died at 11:08. So then I took that as a sign to tell you what I saw.
Jesus,
and
come on.
What she told me was like extremely profound, especially in that moment, because the whole time I've just like tortured that I just didn't do enough for Ariana, that I wasn't enough for her. I felt so bad like during hospice because, like Ashley's dad and my sister, they were the ones that administered the medicine. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't physically give my wife this medicine.
I know that was,
and I just like, I was losing it. And there was 2 points where I like really felt like I like mentally just snapped. And part of the message was just like, I'd have to find it exactly, but it was pretty much, you were always enough for me. Thank you for making my death so peaceful. And I've left like little love notes for you around the house, is what she said.
CJ, how could you not believe? Oh my God, that's amazing.
I mean, it blew me away. And then I had another experience.
Did you find love notes yet?
Yeah, did you find the notes?
So I did tear the house apart, literally tore the house apart. And I think I was just very closed off to it. And I didn't.
Yeah.
I think I probably have missed a lot.
Note.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. It was like it was something like notes or something of like I left things around the house for you or something like that.
Yeah.
I did find like videos that she left for me. I found little things like that I didn't know that she had.
Yeah.
So perhaps that was some of it. But then I had another experience too where I had a friend and they told me like, hey, that's a whole long story. But basically it was another medium who reached out to me and started to tell me some stuff that Ariana was saying and that she really needed to get a hold of me, in touch with me. And I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't do it. I just couldn't do it. It was very early on too, like within the first year.
When it's that early too, and you're still so raw, I think, because I do think you have to be at some level of like wanting to hear and be ready. So for sure.
I just always felt like she's going to be like, you're fucking up the kids or you're fucking this up or this. Like,
it will not be like
I mean,
I know.
What, even if she does say that, man, she's dead. So she can't, like, what are you
exactly. Like, well, where the fuck are you?
Yeah.
I was going to say, you're doing the best you can, for God's sake.
It's like, flip that on its head and be like, so if she does say that.
But I know she wouldn't. I mean, if anything, she would just fuck with me because that's how she was in real life. But yeah, so it's been interesting.
And I will say, I know, like, I will say, like, I think about your kids being young, and I feel like in some ways, like, we say this all the time, like, it would have been, if it had to happen, because clearly we would all wish that our loved ones are here till we're 100. I mean, I can accept that we have to go, but, why did she not get to live her full life and do, and we had our grandparents till they were in their 90s. My grandma died at 92. Wow. Like, my mom died at 58. Like, what? So, it's just crazy. But I just do feel like, like my best friend's mom passed away when she was 21, and like her kids, they certainly know of her mom, but like she herself still like says her mother's name and starts crying. So like she's just not, everybody's just different in the way that they handle and process things. But I feel like you have so much life ahead of you. Your kids have so much life ahead of them, but like, keep her around, keep her with you, your wife with you and on that journey. But like, it's just, I do think like in some ways, like it's like you said, Ashley, like you were little, like you don't remember, like, and it's
Mm.
good and it's bad. You know what I mean? Like, cause you don't want them to ever forget or not know their mom 100%. But on the other hand, like kids are just so much more resilient than adults. Like I say it all the time. Like I wish I could be like these kids, yeah, grandma's in heaven. It'll be great. We'll see her in a few, we're going to see her someday and it's all fine.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
if only it was
great,
that easy.
Right. Like, and we don't want them to be scared, and like, we want them to understand about heaven, and that's wonderful. Like they're great with it. But, and meanwhile, we're like, choking every time they say things like that. I'm like,
oh yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's interesting.
They don't remember, but in 20 years when they're at therapy, unpacking all the trauma from your parenting, it'll all come out.
Speaking? Yeah, exactly. Like, listen,
you really
I told
Dad
him
really should have.
I budgeted money already for you. When you guys get older, part of your inheritance is to pay for all your therapy, and like I'm okay with that because I did do the best that I could.
You can have multiple too because I have multiple. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's awesome. But like I said, I am the weirdo that loves therapy and all that. But speaking of like help and all that, the question that we love to ask at the end is there one piece of advice or thing that you would say to somebody in your situation? And is there something that you would want to offer to people who are caring for somebody who just lost a parent?
Oh boy, let's think here. I would say when you lose a loved one, any loved one, again, it's cliche and I've said it 10 times, make them a household name. Don't, talk. And I would say, talk about your grief. Let people ask you questions. It's okay to say, I'm not ready to talk, or I don't want to talk today, but keep asking because at some point they'll want to. And I just feel like you cannot keep that stuff bottled up inside. Like I literally see my best friend, 20 years later, she still has a very hard time. Like I never met her mom because I met her before her mom was already gone when I met her. And I don't feel like I know her mom, you know what I mean? Because it's just been really hard for her to like share that. So as much as you can feel comfortable just telling your story as any part of it, that would be one piece of advice. And then just, and then that it's okay to move forward. We are here. We are still living for whatever reason the plan was, my mom made a great impact in her 58 years. I selfishly wish that there had been more years, but live every day, make the most of every day. This was a sucker, it was a sucker punch to the gut. You didn't think that was going to ever happen. And now that it does, I just think I know personally, like I used to be scared to try something new. I'm like, you know what? Just give it a whirl. Like you just don't know. So I think that would be another piece of advice that I would give is you have to keep living, and it's our job to honor those that have gone before us, to live as much of this life as we can, because we don't know how long it's going to be.
Well, we're very grateful that you came on and were willing to share with us and share your mom with us too.
Thank you for having me. It was very therapeutic.
You're not the first person to say that.
No, and I've got her right in the forefront of my brain as I meet new children tomorrow. So at school, so that'll be great. Thank you guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast.